All right, we are here at Elevate Sports Performance. We had Max on the podcast earlier this year in episode 11. We talked a lot about movement and how having better movement patterns can make you a better cyclist. So to actually let Max do his thing, we came here to Las Vegas to actually have a movement assessment done. We're going to go through the FMS today. We're going to go through an athletic assessment, and then we're going to have Max take us through a strength program that he's designed. All cyclists are busy, and the goal for us was to do it twice a week, 30 to 40 minutes per session, so that we can, one, stay healthy on the bike and help us improve our performance on the bike. So, Max, let's just talk really quick about what we're going to do today to have a proper strength program. There are several components that go into it. Can you help us understand what those components are to have a good program?
And you're talking about the elements of the program itself, not the assessment.
Exactly, the elements of the program. So some tissue and strength and all that kind of stuff.
So, basically after the assessment process, we like to say the assessment system, whatever we're going to do next, is going to bias our training process. So if we kind of find that, an athlete has a lot of movement limitation or mobility restrictions, or they're just tight, like we all probably are, the front end of the program is going to be kind of structured towards a tissue health, things people are familiar with, like foam rolling, some specific tissue work, whether crossball or baseball, all the stuff that people tend to curse about when they're rolling around the ground. Secondary would be more of what they call joint range of motion, some of the stuff we spoke about in the initial podcast, doing some larger joint range of motions. For a cyclist perspective, we're going to stick with the hips and the ankles because those are kind of the big two joints that we can get the most bang for our buck with from a time standpoint. Then after some, very general dynamic warm up, we're going to then transition you into some power, or what I call the fast, sexy stuff.
Yep.
And then after that, we'll go into some, just a very, simple strength training routine that can kind of handle, what I call kind of fill that strength bucket with the time stipulations that a busy cyclist has. So we'll hit some lower body, some upper body, and some core movements that are probably not like non-traditional.
Yep.
Sit-ups, crunches, things like that, and we'll stay away from those. And basically, the ultimate kind of game plan is you just want to fill that strength bucket a little bit for them, so they can then have a higher training volume and load and be able to handle it better for the long term. Because if you're consistent with your training, you're going to get the results you want.
Perfect. Okay. And then so we're going to do the FMS, which is kind of a standard system. And then you have your own system that we talked about in episode 11, which is an athlete assessment. So we'll get into all the details of that, and Max will go through it as we're doing it. And John and I are both going to do this today because I am a cyclist. I ride a lot, and I'm probably going to have all of the problems that most cyclists have. I also have a labral tear in my left hip, so that may show a program for someone who's a little bit more inhibited. You explain, John, what type of workouts you do primarily?
I do a lot of, I'm a recreational cyclist really, but then, beyond that, I do a lot of, it's called GST or gymnastic strength training. So it's a lot of body weight, all that sort of stuff. I love it. And then I hike probably 3 or 4 miles a day.
Okay. So John, growing up, we're twins, so we're always compared. John was always much more flexible than I was. So you'll see probably some very impressive range of motion from John and some probably very limited from me. So this will give our listeners...
So we got Gumby and Tin Man.
Yeah, Gumby. So you'll get a really good, if you're watching this or you're going to follow the video yourself, if you're very flexible and mobile, maybe do some of the things that John does, and Max is going to make some suggestions for someone who is potentially injured or a little bit more inhibited, and we'll get right to it. So let's get started.
Cool. Awesome.